Welcome back to Public Affairs on Peach. I'm Gloria Neal, and we're talking about dangerous drugs here in Georgia. My next guest is on the front lines of the war on drugs. Robert Murphy, Associate Special Agent in charge for the DEA Atlanta, is here with me. Thanks for coming in, Robert.
Thanks for having us, Gloria. It's important you getting this message out. It's appreciated.
It is very important. So many people do not realize how much drugs play a role in other crimes. Talk a little bit about that, Robert.
And you're right, Gloria, and it's on both sides of the equation. Sometimes we only think about it from the side of the violence with the drug traffickers. They got to protect their drugs, they got to protect their money, but it's also on the other side, on the user amount, who are doing the what we call the quality of life crimes, breaking into houses, breaking into cars to get the stuff to steal so they can sell it so they can feed their habits. So it's on both sides of the equation, and we see it throughout our prisons.
And a lot of times they don't actually think about that. They just see the crime. Somebody broke into my house, or somebody actually stole this from me, or broke into my car. What about gangs? How does that relate to drugs?
In Georgia, especially gangs, we've seen it. They're more on the distribution level. We see on the street level distribution. By far, our biggest control of the drug trade in Georgia and throughout this country is the Mexican cartels. But they've now realized they can use these gangs. The gangs need the money to finance what they're doing. It's all about money. And the Mexican cartels have gotten increasingly looking towards using these younger juveniles in these gangs who are immune for some prosecution for some reason. So there's a lot of appeal, but they're basically ruining these young kids' lives.
So in other words, they use these younger juveniles to commit the more violent crimes because they realize that the laws won't.
They're not going to catch up.
Exactly, exactly. What trends do you see that concern you the most in our area right now, Robert?
The trends I see, I mean, we still predominantly methamphetamine, cocaine, the usuals, but what's really disturbing to me is the synthetic drugs that are coming in here and the opioid addiction. We have now where people have realized, mainly in China, that it's very cheap to make. They can change the molecular makeup of the drug so the laws aren't keeping up with it, and it's the marketing to our kids what these synthetics are doing. They're mimicking real drugs. They're packaging them for kids. When you look at them, they're absolutely packaged for kids. It's not packaged for anybody. It's being sold, and I think the lack of fear that our kids have, it's a lack of awareness and fear that we have out there, and these kids think they're harmless because they're packaged and they can buy them in a gas station. They can buy them, and it's just a terrible trend.
And so when you say lack of fear, because I think a lot of times people who are watching and listening and they say, well, what's he talking about, lack of fear? In other words, kids think, well, that's not going to happen to me. I'm not either going to get hooked, or I'm not going to die from it, or I'm not going to OD, or it's just not going to happen to me. That's what you mean? Gloria,
you're dead on. We have, over probably the last decade, gotten away from that prevention message. I think it's one of the most important things to the use of, yes, we're going to do whatever we can. From a law enforcement perspective, we're going to keep doing what we do. We're going to attack that. But we prefer not to be here talking about this, and we've got to get the message out to our kids. We've, for so long, have had this message that there's a medicine or there's a pill for everything that ails me. And what's trickling down to our kids, they're seeing their parents use it, and the opioid addiction starting out with pills, and it's leading to, we have 129 people a day dropping dead from a drug overdose.
Wow.
Now, that number sometimes doesn't mean anything. Let's put this into context here. The average high school graduating class is 400 to 600 kids. So every 6 days, we have an entire graduating class that's dead.
Wow.
High school, I mean, that's
powerful. That is a visual.
Yes, if we had a plane with 129 people fall out of the sky and everybody died in one day, it'd be on the news for weeks.
Wow.
And we're not talking about it. We've got to get this prevention message out. We've got to get these kids.
And no sign of that number decreasing, only increasing.
Wasn't too long ago, it was at 120 a day. And CDC are keeping track of these numbers, and it's just going up.
You touched on something, prescription drugs, because you said, okay, kids see their parents taking the drugs, and even if it's prescription, you see this culture of, well, you know what, it hurts you, so just take a pill for it. How serious a problem are prescription drugs?
It's a huge problem. We've attacked it. We've had some success in that. But what has happened is the Mexican cartels are in the drug business, and what they realize is we're 5% of the world population, and we consume 99% of the hydrocodone in the world.
Wow.
So let's put this: the U.S. is 5% of the world's population, but we consume 99% of the hydrocodone. We consume 85% of the supply of oxycodone in the world. So, but what the Mexican cartels have realized, this is what the Americans want. They want these opioids. they're not going to stand aside. They're going to produce. So that's the danger. We go back. It's a full circle to these synthetic drugs.
Supply and demand.
Now they're pressing this fentanyl into pills and selling them on the street, and people think they're counterfeit pills. They think they're getting the same pill, and we're dealing with fentanyls, and that's why people are dropping dead.
Unbelievable. You really actually have drawn some very vivid pictures. I mean, that is absolutely amazing that it is there, but it is very, very real. Thank you. Those are some real numbers.
Thank you, Gloria. We need to get this message out, and I really appreciate you helping us do that.
You are very, very welcome. My pleasure. Robert Murphy, we thank you. After the break, a Georgia mom praises the DEA for banning a drug she says caused her son to basically kill himself. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.